The moon hung high in the sky, scattering stars across the night. While individuals with low mental energy levels needed sleep to replenish their strength after a long day of work, high-level ability users possessed a higher mental fortitude that allowed them to stay awake for extended periods. To prevent attacks from ferocious beasts while everyone slept, the team unanimously decided they would take turns keeping watch. It was Ethan's turn tonight. He noted that all signals disappeared in the underground world. Cell towers could not be built underground. Although few people guarded the edges of the passages, many ferocious beasts lived nearby. The idea of building a signal-based station so these creatures could connect to the internet and play games with humans seemed laughable. However, EE realized his phone wouldn't completely turn into a brick. Thanks to a reminder on the campus forum, he knew the signal would disappear. He had downloaded several novels well in advance so that he could read them without an internet connection. After awakening his S-rank Ice-type superpower, he felt invincible as he began reading one of the stored novels with great interest. Halfway through the book, Ethan suddenly remembered that he hadn't checked his daily progress. With a thought, the long-lost system panel immediately appeared before him. The interface displayed his status name Ethan, evolution points 300, special ability Ice Crown Sicer, realm awakened, with an upward arrow indicating potential breakthrough. Mental stay 120 Hz, QI and blood 210 calories, skills gunplay as intermediate and ice shard rings a D, also marked with an upward arrow. To Ethan's surprise, not only could his ice shard ring skill be improved, but his cultivation realm could also break through. Between a simple skill upgrade and a major realm breakthrough, Ethan naturally chose the latter. He felt immense satisfaction at the thought of becoming a true superhuman. Suppressing his excitement, Ethan pressed the upward arrow button on the system panel without hesitation. The system immediately announced that 250 evolution points were consumed, triggering the breakthrough from Awaken to lower Tier 1. A power surge of spiritual and physical energy erupted within his body, causing him to concentrate involuntarily. When he opened the panel again, Ethan was shocked to discover that as he broke through his cultivation level, his spiritual and physical attributes had also improved significantly. Instantly, he felt both his thinking ability and strength enhanced. He no longer felt sleepy, he was wide awake. Meanwhile, inside the tent, Lauren was in a state between sleep and wakefulness. As a second-tier lower-level ability user, her sensitivity to elemental energy surpassed that of the other members of the Firefox team. While she slept, she sensed significant fluctuation of elemental energy outside the tent. She immediately perked up, unzipped the tent and stepped out. All she saw was Ethan, who was looking down at a novel. Lauren inquired if any traces of ferocious beasts had been found nearby. Ethan shook his head in response, indicating that he had not found any. Just as Lauren was about to return to sleep, she suddenly sensed something, and exclaimed in shock that he had broken through to become a superhuman. Ethan answered honestly, confirming the truth. Although surprised, Lauren felt happy for him. Ethan's increased strength meant the Firefox team's overall power had risen. After resolving her inner confusion, Lauren felt drowsiness return. She exhaled a breath, returned to her tent, and settled back into sleep. During his spare time, Ethan began his long night watch. Fortunately, the hours passed without incident. One by one, several members of the Firefox team woke up. After packing away the tents and quickly washing up, they resumed their plans. They recalled that the original intention had been for Ethan to practice first, but upon arriving at this gathering place of shadow cats and white spotted dogs, he proved even stronger than anyone had anticipated. Although it was meant to be a practice session, the team realized they hadn't actually learned much. In fact, Ethan didn't require extensive training. He only needed basic common sense instruction. For instance, how to efficiently collect crystal cores from the bodies of ferocious beasts, or which wild herbs were poisonous. Lauren took out the map, and the rest of the Firefox team gathered together. She proposed heading to an area they usually frequented that day, and everyone responded with enthusiastic agreement. The Firefox team often operated in a different part of the forest where black, spotted deer frequently appeared. Ethan narrowed his eyes at the target. The black spotted deer was a ferocious, deer-like beast with a completely black body. It was ugly in appearance, and its cultivation level typically hovered around the middle or upper levels of the first rank. Despite its unattractive look, however, the antlers of the black, spotted deer were highly sought after because they could nourish the body and replenish yang energy, making them a valuable commodity in the market. On the way, Liam leaned closer to Ethan, expressing concern about his physical condition and whether he experienced any difficulty suppressing his emotions. Ethan shook his head, assuring him that everything was fine. He knew Liam was referring to the bloodlust he had unconsciously acquired after hunting ferocious beasts. While calming potions could effectively prevent a loss of control, one still needed time in another world to cool down their system. Hearing this, Liam looked on with palpable envy and gave Ethan a thumbs up. He recounted that when he first entered the underworld, he lost control of his emotions that very afternoon and was forced to leave. Ethan understood it wasn't merely due to superior strength, but because his ice-type ability could effectively suppress his emotions, keeping him calmer. After walking for several hours and encountering and defeating numerous ferocious beasts along the way, they finally reached their destination. By the side of the stream, the group spotted another creature. It was an entirely black and unsightly beast, a black deer that lay on its back, drinking water. The black deer proved too skilled for the Firefox team, and they could not escape its clutches. With Ethan's participation, the group had made a massive haul by day's end, filling the large suitcases more than halfway. That mile keeping watch, Ethan suddenly felt compelled to check his system panel. The interface displayed his status name: Ethan Evolution Points 4050, Special Ability Ice Crown Cess, Realm Lower First Tier, Mental State 140 as, Qine Blood 240 calories and Skills Marksmanship Intermediate and Ice Shard Ring Feed at the beginner level, with an upward arrow indicating potential growth. Observing the stats, he noted his total evolution points were 450. He recalled that yesterday he had only 50 points remaining. Thus, today's hunting had yielded a gain of 400 points. He reflected on this point accumulation. While killing a black deer would provide significantly more evolution points, shadow cats and white, spotted dogs were much more densely distributed, whereas the black deer could only be encountered once in a long time. Consequently, the total points gained today were not drastically higher than those from the previous day. A slight disappointment surfaced when he noticed that the upward arrow was present only on the ice shard ring and nowhere else concerning his realm level, meaning advancement was currently impossible. However, quickly dismissed this feeling. He remembered that haste makes waste. In the path of cultivation, the most taboo thing was to be overly eager for quick success. As night deepened and quietly faded into morning, the first rays of dawn pierced through the clouds, signaling the start of the third day. Daytime had arrived, and the Firefox team still intended to remain put and continue their hunt for black deer. After dissecting a black deer's abdomen with a long spear and using a dagger to cut off the antlers of a black, spotted deer, Ethan felt a strange sense of lingering irritability in his heart. Although he could suppress it with his superpower, the sensation was still palpable. He reported this feeling to Lauren, the captain of the Firefox team. With an expression of deep concern that Ethan hadn't seen since joining the team, Lauren immediately took out a bottle of calming potion from her backpack. She opened it and forced him to drink the entire contents. After drinking the potion, Ethan felt that the inexplicable irritability in his heart was completely suppressed. However, he quickly realized this effect was only temporary. To prevent irreversible damage to his future spiritual practice and emotions, he understood that returning to the real world immediately was necessary for him to cool down. Consequently, after a unanimous decision by the Firefox team, they sent him back to Jiangzhou City to ensure his safety. The other members returned to their original world to continue the hunt. Time passed quickly. Upon arriving in Jiangzhou City, superhumans stationed at both sides of the city gate used special devices to scan the Firefox team members. The purpose was to check if anyone had brought a complete ferocious beast into the real world without authorization. After verifying that the companion beasts Hu and Lauren possessed superpowers and maintained a contractual relationship, the inspectors allowed them to pass. Ethan learned about Eldoria's strict rules. Only a specialized organization could bring captured ferocious beasts into the real world. Upon arrival, they had to be transformed into a ferocious beast egg using a special device before hatching again. This exclusive organization was none other than the renowned Companion Beast Breeding and Research Association. He also learned that some people awakened special abilities that were neither combat nor support in nature. Instead, these related to this field, allowing them to join the local Companion Beast Breeding and Research Association for development. Lauren wrote down her QQ number on a piece of paper and gave it to Ethan, instructing him to add her upon his return. She also promised to notify him of any future operations according to their team's division rules. Ethan nodded slightly, folded the paper and put it in his pocket. The group subsequently parted ways. The Firefox team departed, heading deeper into another world to continue hunting ferocious beasts. Meanwhile, Ethan returned to the Iron Peak Citadel through the interdimensional portal within Jiangzhou City. Once connected to the internet, Ethan took out his phone and searched for QQ numbers using the provided information. The first stain that caught his eye was a chibi-style portrait of a bright red fox. Thinking to himself that Sister Lauren really liked foxes, he sent her a friend request. Although the Jiangzhou City superpower base remained bustling with activity and noise, Ethan paid it no extra attention. He left alone, took the same subway, and after several hours, finally returned to Crystalport Academy. Upon arriving at Crystalport Academy, Ethan walked only a few steps before reaching the school gate. He paused there for a long time, observing the massive structure. It was often said that a university's gate represented its face, and he had to admit that the entrance of Crystalport Academy was truly magnificent. The sheer grandeur of the gate was so impressive that it made one want to stop and admire it. Entering the campus grounds, Ethan walked only a short distance when a familiar figure came into view, with a peaceful expression. Kevin, the senior student who had picked him up previously. He greeted Devon by calling out his name. Kevin noticed Ethan's greeting, but his attention was quickly drawn to the dried bloodstains on the spear carried over Ethan's back. He frowned slightly and questioned if Ethan had entered the underground world. Ethan did not deny the accusation, simply confirming that he had. Before Kevin could respond further, he sensed a faint aura emanating from Ethan. Changing the subject with a hint of surprise in his expression, Kevin then asked if Ethan had already advanced to the level of a superhuman. Upon hearing Ikan's affirmative answer, Kevin smiled and offered his congratulations. He also apologized for having forgotten to mention the campus forum to him a few days prior. Ethan simply waved his hand dismissively, indicating that he did not take the apology seriously. Taking advantage of the moment, Ethan addressed Kevin, posing a question. He specifically asked about the required interval between entering the underground world after having done so for the first time. As Ethan was leaving, Kevin reminded him that his weapons and combat suit needed cleaning. He pointed out a dedicated cleaning center at school, noting it was not far to the right of the dormitory area. Ethan scanned a shared electric scooter parked on the roadside. He realized these vehicles were more advanced than typical models because they utilized elemental energy drawn from a ferocious beast's crystal core for auxiliary propulsion, making them much faster within the academy grounds. Soon after, followed his phone's map and arrived at the cleaning center next to the dormitory area. Upon entering, the staff greeted him warmly, asking if he was there to have his weapons and equipment cleaned. Given the menacing aura emanating from Ethan, and the dried blood staining his gear, it was clear that the staff assumed he had just returned from the underground world. After indicated his needs, the staff member explained the cost. Spears were 68 blue star coins each, while a complete set of male combat armor cost 288 blue star coins. He requested an student ID and informed him that after cleaning, they would send a unique collection code to the Heart in Crystalport Academy app for retrieval. Ethan first scanned 356 blue star coins using his mobile phone before handing over his student ID. Inside a specially equipped room, he changed out of his protective suit into casual clothes and handed over his battle armor and spear. After swiping Ethan's student ID, the staff member looked visibly surprised. The staff questioned him about still being a specially recruited freshman. Ethan simply asked what was wrong. The staff member shook his head, explaining that it was quite rare to see specially recruited freshmen venturing into the underground world. With the cleaning process complete, Ethan did not return to the dormitory area. Instead, he turned his electric scooter around and headed toward the Nexus Point Task Center. Ethan arrived at a task submission window and handed over the 10 shadow cat paws, wrapped in plastic bags, along with his student ID to the staff. He stated that his mission was complete. These 10 shadowy cat paws represented his haul from his first day in the underground world. After carefully inspecting the paw samples and finding no problems, the staff returned the student ID to Ethan. They informed him that he had completed a C-level task, which was worth 0.5 credits, and that this reward was expected to arrive in his account that day. The realization struck Ethan that 0.5 credits were worth between 5,000 and 10,000 blue star coins, which wasn't much. However, immediately after completing the task, he was surprised to find that his task level had reached level 2 on the Heart in Crystalport Academy app. This meant he could now accept 2 tasks at the same time, a near doubling of his academic credit earning efficiency. With no immediate plans after leaving the Nexus Point, Ethan rode his electric bike back to his dormitory. After using his key and entering the door, he called out for Xiaoya to turn on the air conditioner. The response was instantaneous. The entire villa gradually filled with cool air, becoming much cooler. Ice-type ability users particularly preferred such cold environments. Ethan ordered takeout and settled onto the sofa while waiting for the meal. Suddenly, Xiao Yao's mechanical voice rang out in the room, announcing that someone was knocking at the door. Simultaneously, a distinct thump-thump-thump sound echoed from outside. A sense of unease crept into Ethan's heart as he wondered who might be looking for him. He walked over to the dormitory door and opened it. Standing at the entrance was a tall, strong young man, but Ethan felt he did not recognize him. He wondered what this person wanted from him. Before he could process his thoughts, the stranger spoke first, introducing himself as Fang Shai. He revealed that he had awakened the S-level Earth-type ability, Vajrashwan II. Furthermore, he noted that like Ethan, he was also a specially recruited freshman at Crystalport Academy for the current year. Ethan responded by stating his name and raising an eyebrow in inquiry about Fang Shi's purpose. Fang Shi then chuckled heartily, revealing that his true intention was to challenge Ethan. Ethan did not press him on why he sought this confrontation. He understood that some people were naturally inclined to challenge others, seeking out weaknesses as a means of personal progress. Since everyone had a different way of cultivating themselves, such behavior was unsurprising. He then asked Fang Shi what benefits they would gain if he won the fight. Fang Shi scratched his head and laughed, proposing a deal. He would transfer 100,000 blue star coins to Ethan, regardless of whether or not Ethan emerged victorious. 100,000 blue star coins. Ethan's gaze sharpened immediately. He had not realized that Fang Shi, who appeared honest and simple, was actually a young master. Since he had spent so many blue star coins purchasing his battle suit previously, this offer represented an excellent way to recoup some of his losses. Ethan then suggested postponing the fight until the following day, explaining that he had just returned from the underground world and was feeling quite tired. Upon hearing the mention of the underground world, Fang Shi immediately displayed an expression of profound admiration. He commented on how early it was for Ethan to visit the underground world, adding that his own parents would not allow him such a trip, but viewing those who ventured into the depths so young as brave. While the two men were talking, a pretty figure emerged from the dormitory across the way. On her shoulder rested a small, dark blue dragon. This was Amelia, and she was planning to take her companion beast, the deep-water demon dragon cub, to the school's ability hall for training. Hearing the conversation, Amelia's gaze drifted unconsciously toward them. Fang Shi observed this scene. He recalled that he had attempted to challenge her the day before, but she had politely declined. After all, since she possessed a grass-type ability, suppressing his earth-type ability would be easy, and he likely wouldn't gain much from a battle. Moreover, she certainly would not consider accepting 100,000 blue star coins. However, through her special ability, natural spiritual enlightenment, Amelia sensed that the two boys in the opposite dormitory seemed to possess a much stronger aura than they had displayed just a few days ago. She wondered if he had officially become a superhuman. Amelia was slightly surprised. It is important to understand that becoming a full-fledged superhuman from an awakened being is not something that happens overnight. It is more of a gradual process. Of course, our own comprehension and the guidance of a mentor can accelerate this process. Just like herself, she had only been awakened for a little over 3 months. But she had already broken through to the awakener realm, and her current realm had reached the middle level of the first rank. This is because her aunt happens to be a 7th-tier master who has awakened an S-rank grass-type ability, and she will give her some guidance from time to time. Speaking of which, Amelia chose Crystalport Academy not only because her family is based in Vedantia province. Another reason is that her aunt is the dean of the grass department at Crystalport Academy. But the boys in the dorm across the hall are different. Although he is tall and handsome, giving people a sunny feeling, judging from their clothing, their family's financial situation is probably not very good. There shouldn't be anyone specifically providing guidance. Aside from the tutor's guidance, it can only mean that the boy in the opposite dormitory has a pretty good understanding. Amelia narrowed her eyes, a barely perceptible hint of wariness flashing in her beautiful gaze. She sees Ethan as a rival. Without hesitation, she turned and left, quickening her pace toward the Ascension Citadel. In the afternoon, after having lunch, Ethan played on his phone for a while before lying down on the bed and falling into a deep sleep. When he woke up again, looking through the bedroom window, Ethan realized that it was already dark. He subconsciously picked up his phone from beside his pillow, unlocked the screen, and saw the time, 2021. At the same time, Ethan also discovered that Hart in Crystalport University had sent him a message. Your rifle and equipment have been cleaned. Please come and collect them as soon as possible. The collection code is 34679. Additional storage fees will be charged if the collection is delayed for more than 3 days. The message was sent approximately 1 hour ago. After quickly tying up, Ethan rode the shared electric scooter parked at the dormitory entrance toward the cleaning center. Despite the darkness, the tall streetlights along the roadside made the road as bright as day, so Ethan did not slow down his cycling speed. On the way, he felt his pocket shaking slightly. His phone was ringing. Ethan stopped his electric scooter, took out his phone, and saw that it was a call from his mother. Ethan was a little puzzled. His mother had called him when he first arrived at school. Now, only a few days later, why was she calling again? Of course, this doesn't mean I'm annoyed. Ethan knew his mother's personality well. She wasn't the type to call all the time or show excessive concern for her son. He answered the phone. The voice of his mother, Sarah, came through. Ethan, we are moving. Ethan quickly asked, moved? Where did you move to? Sarah replied, it is not decided yet. The city said we can just choose any one place. That is it. I will let you know after we have chosen. Just focus on your studies. The city said they could pick any apartment. Ethan understood. It was probably because of the reward given by the city. About 10 minutes later, Ethan arrived at the cleaning center as he had hoped. He walked to the reception desk and gave the staff his collection code. A few minutes later, the staff returned Ethan's spear and battle armor to him. The staff also warmly wished him well. Welcome to visit again next time, classmate. The next morning, a prompt alerted him that someone was knocking at the door. After Grace prompted him, Ethan, who was washing up on the second floor, sped up. Less than a minute later, he appeared in front of the dormitory. Opening the dormitory door, the tall, strong figure from yesterday was indeed there, with the same honest and simple expression. This person is James, who came to challenge them yesterday. Upon seeing Ethan emerge, James smiled and suggested that they head straight for the arena area. He explained that in a university setting, especially one like Crystalport Academy, top superpower institution in China, conflicts were common among hot-blooded students. To manage his universities typically set up special challenge areas. In a world of superpowers, it was perfectly normal to let strength speak for itself. Both parties may make a bet, and the referee shall act as a witness. Moreover, the arena is open to all students present to watch. Whether you win or lose, you cannot cheat. Ethan nodded and then noticed a cute looking brown bear next to James. Ethan pointed his finger and noted that this was James's companion beast. James rubbed his nose and assured him that although Little Stone looks like this, it is actually quite strong. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Ethan and James rode on shared electric bikes parked next to the dormitory building and headed towards the arena area of Crystalport Academy. During the journey, James mentioned that besides them, there were 8 other specially recruited students in the school who had all refused his challenge. When James stopped halfway, he reiterated this fact. Ethan immediately grasped the significance of this number, 10 specially recruited freshmen in the class of 52. He narrowed his eyes, and a serious expression settled over him. He realized that heroes from all over the world are as numerous as carp crossing a river. It seems that this year's freshman competition is truly full of strong contenders. Moreover, the rejection of James's request also demonstrates that the other 8 specially recruited students come from families with excellent financial conditions, far beyond what they themselves can compare to. Ethan thought privately that he needed to enter the other world again, as soon as possible to accelerate his strength improvement. Unlike ordinary universities, Crystalport Academy has a large campus with a large number of canteens, and even 4 arena areas. They were heading toward the nearest one. After an unknown amount of time, the two finally arrived at the designated arena area. Entering arena area, what came into view is a large area of neatly arranged square arenas. The ropes made of D-grade alloy that surround the ring will not break easily. Ethan quickly counted them and estimated there were probably several dozen. However, since it was early morning, most of these arenas were empty and there was no one on them. Similarly, in the audience seats of the arena, only a few people were chatting idly. Upon arriving at the arena area, a staff member soon approached them and inquired if they wished to have a match. Both Ethan and James nodded in unison, confirming their desire for a friendly spar. After receiving affirmative answers from both men, the staff member instructed them to proceed to the registration desk. Once registered, they would be permitted to ascend to the ring for combat. The two walked over and filled out the forms provided by the staff. A knowing smile crossed the staff member's face as he directed them forward, and Ethan and James followed his guidance. As soon as they reached the front of the ring, a middle-aged man approached, trailing the staff member. The aura this referee unconsciously emitted allowed Ethan to immediately realize that the man was likely at the level of a second-tier ability user. His uniform confirmed his authority within Crystalport Academy. This realization fueled Ethan's internal critique. Crystalport Academy truly was arrogant. Even a second-tier superpowered individual could only serve as a minor referee here. He recalled vividly that in his hometown of Riverbend City, even a second-tier superhuman could achieve the rank of captain at the police station. While Ethan remained lost in thought, the staff had already unlocked the arena for them. The referee then asked if they intended to make any bets. Both men shook their heads immediately. James's gift of 100,000 Blue Star coins was a voluntary gesture following the previous competition, and could not be considered a wager. After dismissing the bet discussion, the referee stated that they would each take up opposite sides of the ring, and the match would commence instantly. The two nodded in agreement and walked to separate corners. Initially, James's companion beast, the stone-armored bear cub, attempted to accompany him into the arena. However, considering that Ethan did not appear to have his own companion beast yet, James decided to leave the stone-armored bear cub safely under the arena floor, ensuring a much fairer one-on-one confrontation. The two young men stood facing each other on either side of the ring. One held a long spear with gleaming eyes, while the other gripped a large knife, his face radiating confidence. James suggested they have a friendly spar and agreed to stop when they reached their natural limit, which Ethan acknowledged with an okay gesture. After counting down, the referee announced the start and blew the whistle, signaling that battle was about to break out. James began by activating his power, calling forth Diamond Mystic Soil. He gripped the knife with both hands, and earth-based energy covered the greatsword, giving it a warm, dark yellow sheen instead of sparks flying. Taking half a step forward, The treads on the soles of his boots settled steadily onto the steel plate floor without resistance. At the same moment, Ethan did not hold back. A crown made of ice and snow quietly appeared atop his head, and simultaneously, 3 icicles began rotating around him. Seeing this display, James couldn't help but think that Ethan was quite handsome. Emedium moved with his gun, condensing his ice-type ability into fine frost flowers at the tip. Instead of melting or dripping, these frost flowers cast small, cold shadows across the arena floor as he moved. As he dodged James's sweeping blade, his movements were swift and agile, gliding across the steel plate with a slight rustling sound from his shoes. When the square stone was cleaved vertically downward, the dull thud of the blade hitting the air did not raise earth or rock. Instead, the dark yellow luster of the blade became even more solid. Ethan spun around to dodge, allowing his spear shaft to diagonally touch the side of the blade, where the ice flowers and the dark yellow energy met. After the two forces collided, they quickly separated. Although it was meant to be a friendly sparring match, both men displayed their true skills in combat. After a period of intense fighting, fine beads of sweat appeared on the foreheads of both men. Ethan realized that James's ability to endure was stronger than his own. He decided to create an opening, provoking James into making a radical strike with a triumphant smile gracing his lips. By the time James registered what was happening, it was too late. All Ethan was a flash of cold light appearing first, followed by the spear thrusting out like a dragon. After firsting with his spear, Ethan suddenly flicked it, sending James's broadsword flying to the side of the arena. With one weapon disarmed, the outcome was self-evident. The referee announced that Ethan had won. A closer look at the official revealed a hint of lingering enjoyment in his expression. He seemed convinced that Ethan had performed a fantastic battle worthy of being a specially recruited freshman at Crystalport Academy. The match concluded. James clasped his hands into a fist salute and offered sincere congratulations to Ethan. Ethan returned the gesture, stating that it was fun to spar with someone of the same skill level, as he himself had discovered several problems that would likely allow him to improve significantly. After leaving the ring, James readily honored their agreement by transferring 100,000 Blue Star coins into Ethan's bank account. Upon receiving the transfer, Ethan asked James if he had eaten breakfast that day. James scratched his head and chuckled, replying that he hadn't. He suggested they go have breakfast together, which Ethan agreed to. At the teen, Ethan ordered a basket of xiaolongbao, also known as soup dumplings, and a bowl of soy milk, while James ordered several times more than Ethan did. The two ate their meal and chatted casually. James then asked Ethan to describe what life was like in the underground world. This had been a question that James wanted to ask since the previous day. Although he'd find related pictures online, they all seemed bland and uninteresting. He still desired a first-hand account from someone who had actually experienced it. Ethan recounted in detail everything he had seen and heard within the underground world, describing the scenery as being roughly like an immense forest. James listened with intense focus, nodding repeatedly while a look of deep longing settled across his face. He made up his mind right then. He would join a team and venture into the underground world to broaden his horizons. At worst, he'd keep this ambition from his family. After all, they had not installed any surveillance cameras around him. After finishing breakfast and replenishing his energy, Ethan did not head straight back to his dormitory for rest. Instead, he decided to visit the school's dedicated Superpowers Hall for practice. Top universities like Crystalport Academy had signed special contracts with multiple superpower academies across the country. Among so many supernatural ability pavilions, there would naturally be an Ice and Snow Superpowers Hall, since Riverbend City did not possess one. But a superpower center utilizing the same system as his had appeared here. Ethan felt compelled to go and take a look. The first Ability Hall was founded by Clara, an 8th rank Grandmaster who had awakened the S-rank ability, Divine Frost Mystic Ice. Despite its impressive origins, Clara's influence remained somewhat inferior to that of the owners of the two major superpower halls, Ethereum Hall and Blaze Mastery Hall. After all, those two masters were 9th level experts, a rarity in all of Eldoria. Furthermore, ice-type abilities are extremely rare, and specialized ability centers have not been established everywhere. Consequently, they do not dot every corner of the country. In places like Ethan's hometown of Riverbend City, there was no trace of the Frostheart Ability Hall. To facilitate student training, Crystalport Academy had designated a specific area for building superpower halls. About 20 minutes later, Ethan found himself near this designated zone while riding a shared electric scooter. He looked up and gazed into the distance. There stood numerous tall and magnificent buildings: Aetherium Hall, Blaze Mastery Hall, Tidal Surge Ability Hall, and more. Because each superpower represented by these halls dictated unique architectural styles, every building exuded an undeniable sense of grandeur and awe, stirring both people's hearts and minds. As Ethan continued riding, he noticed a pattern. Venues like Aetherium Hall and Blaze Mastery Hall, halls corresponding to abilities with a relatively higher probability of awakening during the ceremony, attracted significantly larger crowds. Conversely, halls for abilities with lower awakening probabilities, such as grass or ice types, were almost completely deserted. Ethan finally drove all the way to the entrance of the Frostheart Ability Hall and parked his scooter in the designated area. It had been too far away to see clearly until now. He could finally get a clear view from the front. The building's overall color scheme was ice blue, complemented by snowflake symbols on the roof, and deliberately placed falling snowflakes surrounding it. Various elements were combined and arranged perfectly, exhibiting a distinctive icy characteristic. Directly in front of the structure, 5 characters reading Frostheart Superpower Hall were written in a flamboyant and elegant style. Ethan genuinely praised its construction for how well built it was. Yet, he felt a deep sense of disappointment. No matter how grandly built the Frostheart Ability Hall was, it remained as deserted as its corresponding ice element, with hardly anyone visiting. After letting out a simple sigh, Ethan entered the Frostheart Ability Hall. A chilling blast of cold air immediately hit him in the face. He looked up the temperature display on the wall and noted that the room temperature was below 10 degrees Celsius. This environment felt excellent for an ice-type ability user, especially compared to the artificial cooling of his dormitory. His gaze swept around the hall. Aside from sharing the same icy blue color scheme as the exterior, the interior was quite similar to Aetherium Hall. However, as this superpower hall was located on the sprawling campus of Crystalport Academy, rather than in his hometown of Riverbend City, it had been constructed to an even grander scale. Seeing that Ethan appeared to be a first-time visitor, a staff member wearing a uniform greeted him with a beautiful smile and offered assistance. Ethan muttered slightly and explained his situation. He had awakened an S-rank ice-type ability, currently at the lower level of the first tier, and utilized a spear as his primary weapon. Since it was his first visit, he hoped for recommendations regarding a suitable training room. The staff member's pupils suddenly widened upon hearing about the S-rank ability, making her visibly taken aback. When Ethan prompted her reaction, she quickly recovered her composure. She explained that she had only ever encountered students with abilities up to a level. Finding an S rank was incredibly rare, particularly given the intense competition from Stormhaven College. Following this explanation, she recommended that he proceed to the C-level training room on the second floor, suggesting it would be more suitable for his current stage. Ethan confirmed this and inquired about the cost, pulling out his student ID. The staff member informed him that the fee was 1,000 blue star coins per hour, adding that any time less than a full hour would still be calculated as a complete hour. Ethan accepted the key provided by the staff and headed to the second floor of the Frostheart Ability Hall. Upon entering his training room, Ethan was shocked. The entire cultivation space was not only filled with abundant yuan energy but also piled high with thick ice and snow. He quickly realized that this material was no ordinary natural element. It possessed a unique function designed to assist in the absorption of yuan energy. Finding an open spot, he began practicing his spear techniques while simultaneously meditating to absorb elemental power. Several hours passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Ethan opened his eyes and exhaled a breath of stale air, feeling incredibly refreshed, a sensation that could never be replicated in Aetherium Hall before. Immediately afterward, he left the training room and paid 4,000 blue star coins when retrieving his student ID. The total payment indicated that he had practiced for a full 4 hours that morning. The staff member smiled sweetly upon his departure, warmly welcoming him and encouraging him to return again next time. The moment Ethan stepped through the automatic doors, his gaze instinctively drifted to his right, where he had parked his shared electric scooter. However, drawing his attention even more was another sight, a slender figure emerging from the nearby Whisperwind Ability Hall. Amelia possessed delicate features and fair skin, her appearance giving an impression that was both neat and efficient. A red ribbon was tied high in her ponytail, and though she wore a loose-fitting outfit, it could not conceal her beautiful figure. Her thighs were notably shapely and long, prompting admiration for what seemed like the creator's masterpiece. This girl was Amelia, residing in the dormitory opposite Ethan's. Trailing behind her was a baby deep sea dragon struggling to keep pace with its mistress. The cub communicated mentally with Amelia, expressing regret for falling behind. Amelia responded by crossing her arms and letting out a cold snort, making it clear that this was a punishment for the companion beast's repeated lack of effort during training earlier that morning. Ethan silently sighed to himself, thinking how magnificent she looked, like a heroine straight out of a manga. After admiring her for a couple of seconds, he turned away. He got on a shared electric scooter parked next to the Frostart Ability Hall and headed toward the nearest cafeteria to replenish his energy. Time passed day by day, bringing Ethan to the 6th day since his arrival at Crystalport Academy as a specially recruited freshman. The Firefox team had finally left the other world and returned to reality from the Iron Peak Citadel. Soon, a sent him a message detailing their team's revenue-sharing rules. He was entitled to 30% of the total revenue for the first 3 days. Ethan quickly replied, expressing surprise at the percentage. He then reiterated that since his performance over the initial 3 days had been outstanding and exceeded expectations, both he and Lauren would each receive 30%, while Noah, Liam, and Olivia would share 40%. He advised her to simply accept it. Since she insisted, Ethan felt no reason to refuse. Next, he asked if she preferred points or blue star coins after the redemption process, noting we're currently at the Iron Peak Citadel, and he could help redeem them on the spot if necessary. Lauren confirmed that sticking with blue star coins was best, although purchasing resources using points in the Iron Peak Citadel would be more cost-effective. Ethan calculated that buying them on his own campus would be even better. As a top university in the country, Crystalport Academy offered preferential treatment incomparable to other superpower bases. 10 minutes later, Ethan received a transfer from Lauren, a total of 89,680 blue star coins. He was somewhat taken aback by the amount, having not expected such a harvest after only 2.5 days of hunting ferocious beasts in the underground world. The suits showed little wear and tear, and were therefore excluded from the cost calculation. His only expenses had been a bottle of disinfectant used for a cut he sustained on the first day's hike, and 2 energy potions to replenish his body's reserves. The total cost was less than 30,000 yuan. In essence, he had made a net profit of 60,000 yuan on this trip. Earning 20,000 yuan a day was a goal he had never dared to dream of before, but now he had achieved it with relative ease. He mused it was no wonder so many people in society possessed supernatural abilities. They knew the danger, but once involved, they rarely left. Suddenly, Ethan remembered using a bottle of calming potion from Lauren before he departed. Realizing this, he sent her another message asking for the cost of the potion and offering to transfer the money immediately. Lauren quickly replied that it was unnecessary, stating that since they were on the same team, helping each other out was normal. However, Ethan insisted on keeping their accounts separate, reminding her that even close colleagues needed clear financial boundaries. With a hint of helplessness in her reply, Lauren can the total amount 12,000 blue star coins. She instructed him to transfer it immediately. Unseen by Ethan, Lauren watched the screen with an exceptionally pleasant mood. She was extremely glad she had made such a good choice that day, hoping to bring into the team a new member who was both skilled and possessed a good personality. After transferring the blue star coins to Lauren, Ethan suddenly had a thought and opened his system panel. The interface displayed his current status. His name was Ethan. He possessed 560 evolution points. His special ability remained the S-rank Ice Crown, His realm level stood at lower first tier, with an upward arrow indicating potential growth. His mental stale measured 142 Hz and his QN blood were recorded at 246 calories. Furthermore, his skills listed marksmanship at intermediate level and ice shard ring at D grade, also marked for advancement. Ethan reflected that on the second night in the underground world, he had only accumulated 450 evolution points. It took the addition of points from ferocious beasts hunted on the third day to reach 560. Since his visit to the Frost Art Ability Hall, Ethan had diligently taken the relevant medicines and persisted in cultivating for at least 6 hours every single day there. Thanks to his intense efforts over the past few days, even though the upward arrow did not appear after the marksmanship skill, it had reappeared next to his realm level. Without any hesitation, Ethan once again chose to attempt a breakthrough of his own realm. A dramatic notification flashed across his vision. 560 evolution points were consumed. His realm was set to advance from lower first tier to middle first tier. As the familiar feeling washed over him, Ethan quickly sat cross-legged on the bed like a straight sword blade, closing his eyes to feel the surging energy within his body. Meanwhile, in the dormitory across the street, Amelia was carrying freshly washed clothes toward the line to hang them out to dry. Thanks to a special power, natural spiritual essence, she possessed extraordinary sensory abilities. At that moment, she suddenly sensed a faint burst of elemental energy emanating from the opposite dormitory. Although the two buildings were separated by a major road, even this slight detection was relative to Amelia's heightened senses. The fact that she could feel it across such a distance indicated that the energy burst must have been extremely powerful. Her first thought was one of deep suspicion. Could the student in the opposite dormitory have broken through to an even higher realm? However, Amelia quickly dismissed this idea. She reasoned that the individual had only recently achieved superhuman status, specifically at the lower first tier. It seemed impossible for him to have advanced all the way to a mid-level first rank in such a short period. If it was not a breakthrough in cultivation level, then what exactly was causing such an intense burst of yuan energy? Amelia blinked, unable to contain her curiosity about the mystery. She decided that she would wait patiently until she could no longer sense the residual energy before crossing the road and investigating the dormitory across the street. After nearly an hour, the burst of yuan energy finally dissipated entirely. Even utilizing her own special ability, natural spiritual essence, Amelia could no longer sense any trace of it. She paused, pondering where they had successfully located the source of the energy surge. Instinctively, she began walking toward Ethan's dormitory door. Just as her finger lifted to knock, however, Amelia stopped herself, raising an eyebrow in careful consideration. It felt too abrupt to simply show up and ask him something. She retreated back to her own room and retrieved 2 slices of chilled watermelon from the refrigerator. Given how hot it was right now, she thought the fruit would be perfect for him. After all, the student residing in the opposite dorm was an ice-type ability user, so he deserved a refreshing treat. Holding the 2 cold slices, Amelia finally knocked on his door, inside Ethan's dormitory. As the surging energy within his body gradually calmed down, he slowly opened his eyes and exhaled a breath of turbid air. With a control panel materialized before him, it displayed name Ethan, evolution point 0, special ability, Ice Crown Zarser, realm level mid-tier 1, mental scalar, 172 Hz. QI and blood mount 96 carry skills markship intermediate, ice shard ring D, beginner. Ethan noted his mental state had improved by 30 Hz, and both his energy and blood reserves had increased by 50 calories. After a brief comparison, he nodded slightly, deeply satisfied with the gains achieved after his cultivation breakthrough. Looking around, he noticed an unusual chill in the air, even seeing a thin layer of frost collecting in some corners. He sighed, wondering if it was truly that scary. Just as he prepared to get out of bed, Shiaya's voice called from inside the room, alerting him that someone had rung the doorbell. Ethan slightly pondering who might be at the door. It did not seem like a square stone. However, he decided not to dwell on it, figuring he would find out once he went downstairs. He descended the spiral staircase and arrived at the dormitory entrance. Upon opening the door, his gaze fell upon a graceful young woman wearing a white, close-fitting, thin short-sleeved shirt. She stood in front of her own dorm room, possessing delicate features and a high, straight nose. Unlike her usual appearance with a red ribbon, her long black hair cascaded down like a waterfall. In her hands she held 2 slices of chilled watermelon. Ethan wondered what her intentions were. Amelia chuckled, puffing out her chest while giving a confident self-introduction, a smile that was undeniably infectious. Ethan smiled slightly and returned the greeting, asking what had brought her to his door. As he glanced at Amelia's ample breasts and the chilled watermelon she held, Ethan accidentally activated auto-aiming. He thought that chilled watermelon was simply a blessing in summer, especially since these 2 slices were seedless. A bite would surely be incredibly refreshing. Amelia snarled knowingly and reached out, handing both pieces of chilled watermelon to him. After accepting the fruit, Ethan asked again if there was anything else she needed to discuss, as he couldn't simply accept a treat. Amelia didn't hesitate. She directly explained that she had sensed a strong burst of elemental energy while inside her dorm room, which is why she came over to inquire about what was happening. Ethan scratched his head and laughed when he questioned how she could sense it even within the confines of her own dorm room. Amelia explained that this ability stemmed from her awakened superpower, natural spiritual essence, granting her a certain degree of sensory perception. She then challenged him by stating that, since they were standing right in front of each other, he should be able to sense her presence now. Ethan smiled faintly and released his supernatural power without any concealment. Amelia's beautiful eyes suddenly widened, and her cherry-like lips parted slightly. She was clearly incredibly surprised. As soon as Ethan walked out of the dormitory and stood before her, the feedback from her supernatural ability indicated that the person in front of her had recently broken through their cultivation level and was now likely at the middle level of the 1st tier. Amelia struggled to believe it subconsciously. After all, how could someone's cultivation breakthrough speed be so terrifying? But since Ethan himself admitted it, and his supernatural abilities were released without any concealment, Amelia had no choice but to accept the facts. After her initial shock subsided, she forced a calm smile, turned around and left Ethan's door. Ethan did not linger in front of the dormitory. He took the 2 slices of chilled watermelon, went back inside and began to enjoy them. He found the fruit crisp and sweet, absolutely delicious. Meanwhile, Amelia returned to her dormitory. Her full breasts rose and fell slightly as a sudden sense of urgency gripped her heart. She realized that Ethan, who lived in the dormitory across the street, had skipped 2 levels and transformed from an awakener into a mid-level 1st-tier ability user in just a few days since entering the school. Although she herself had awakened her supernatural abilities ahead of time and was already at the mid-level of the 1st tier when she entered, she remained stuck at that level with no visible improvement. Amelia shook her head slightly, then suddenly wondered if Ethan's recent trip to the underground world was somehow responsible for her stagnation. Originally, Amelia had planned to wait until the freshman competition ended and the school's passage to the underground world opened before exploring it herself. However, fate proved unpredictable. Now, she felt compelled to try her luck in the underground world ahead of schedule. She reassured herself that despite its appearance, this companion beast was actually a growth-type companion beast, currently at the mid-level of the 1st tier. They were still noble dragons whose combat abilities far surpassed those of ordinary ferocious beasts, meaning there shouldn't be any problem ensuring her safety. The baby deep-sea dragon, who had been sleeping on the sofa, was startled awake by Amelia. It questioned what she was doing with a cute, childlike voice. Slowly, it opened its eyes, still confused about the sudden disturbance. Amelia announced that they were going to the underground world soon. The deep-sea dragon cub's tail swayed gently as it looked at her with confusion, questioning why, since Amelia had told him they were supposed to rest that day. Amelia managed an awkward smile and used a mix of coaxing and deception, promising him he would definitely get a break next time. At this moment, the deep-water dragon cub fully regained its consciousness. The next day, it was also the 7th day since Ethan entered Crystalport Academy. That afternoon, Ethan walked out of the Frostart Ability Hall with a satisfied and content expression. At that moment, the phone in his pocket trembled slightly. Someone had messaged him. Ethan took his phone out of his pocket, tapped the screen, and looked at it. "Junior brother Ethan, are you there?" It was a message from Richard. Since the two parted ways at the cafeteria entrance a few days ago and casually exchanged contact information, they hadn't chatted much since then. And now he was surprised to see that Richard had sent him a message. This made Ethan curious. What would Richard say to him? Ethan Thentje replied, "Senior Richard, I'm here. What's up?" With this in mind, he asked, "Professor Kuhn is back. He wants you to visit him tomorrow." After Ethan replied, Richard's message appeared before his eyes again. "Professor Kuhn is back." Upon seeing this, Ethan's pupils widened suddenly, his heart trembled, and he couldn't help but feel excited. In his excitement, Ethan quickly asked after calming down, "Should I bring any gifts?" Since it was his first time visiting his supervisor, he felt unprepared to go empty-handed. However, choosing a gift was difficult. Something too expensive would hurt feelings, while something cheap might be worse than nothing at all. Finding the right one seemed harder than climbing to heaven. Therefore, asking Professor Kuhn's senior student, Richard, directly was best. Richard replied that no gift was needed, just going directly. Ethan felt relieved that Professor Kuhn did not require a gift. He thought this mentor was wonderful. Richard then offered encouragement. "Just relax when you go. Your mentor definitely won't do anything to you. You are currently the only student in our school to have awakened an S-level ice-type ability. Becoming a student is practically guaranteed, and the probability of being accepted as a disciple is probably very high. Do your best." Then Richard sent another message, "Don't worry, I will." Ethan smiled knowingly and sent his reply. Immediate rode a shared electric scooter from the entrance of the Frost Art Ability Hall, intending to drive to the nearest cafeteria. Suddenly he noticed that in front of him, at the location of the Rock Ability Hall, a person with a very familiar back view was riding an electric bike ahead of him. Ethan looked closely and suddenly remembered. Wasn't that James's back view? So Ethan turned the handlebars to accelerate his electric vehicle. When his scooter got very close to James's electric scooter, Ethan called out, "Brother James." James responded instantly, "Brother Ethan." He then deliberately slowed down to keep pace with Ethan. "Brother Ethan, I didn't expect you to be cultivating here at the Supernatural Abilities Hall. I'm going to the cafeteria for lunch now. Would you like to come with me?" James spoke first. "Perfect timing, I'm hungry too, let's go together." Ethan agreed to James's request. Not long after, the two parked their electric scooters in front of a cafeteria at Crystalport Academy. Ethan ordered 2 servings of green pepper, beef and egg fried rice, along with a large bowl of warm and delicious black chicken soup. He noted that training in the Superpower Hall was extremely physically demanding, so one naturally needed to eat more. But then James's appetite was immense. Of 4 servings of green pepper and beef fried rice, 2 large bowls of tender and fall off the bone corn and pork rib soup, and even 2 large flatbreads. Ethan knew well that James's tone and personality told him he was a northerner from Adoria. Flatbread was a must for him. However, despite the massive amount of food, James did not look fat. He remained strong and muscular, showing that he truly worked out hard. James then reminded Ethan, "Ho, right, brother Ethan. I forgot to tell you last time, one of our specially recruited freshmen has awakened an S-level fire-type ability. You better watch out in the upcoming ability competition." James, who had just taken a big gulp of corn and pork rib soup, offered this friendly reminder. "Wes, I will," Ethan replied, narrowing his eyes with vigilance. He reflected that while ice-based abilities were rare and difficult to achieve during awakening rituals, they were countered by one of the most common types of superpowers: fire-type superpowers. Moreover, this level of restraint was much stronger than the usual restriction of ice-type against grass-type. It was a very strong constraint. At the same superpower level, at the same cultivation level, or even with a difference of 1 or 2 minor cultivation levels, ice would be melted by fire. The water produced by melting ice no longer contained any elemental energy. It was just ordinary water, and posed no threat whatsoever to flames of hundreds or thousands of degrees. Even if you have a high level of superpower, you must never let your guard down the next day. Early in the morning, filled with excitement about his upcoming visit to Professor Kuhn, Ethan got up very early. Since it was so early, he could not go directly to Instructor Kuhn's residence. So he left the dormitory and decided to run a small loop around the dormitory area. Morning runs were very helpful in improving physical fitness. Since arriving at Crystalport Academy, Ethan had insisted on going for a morning run every day, except when he was in the other world. Sometimes he would even run into Amelia from the dorm across the hall, who was also jogging in the morning. After his morning run, fine beads of sweat appeared on Ethan's forehead. At the same time, his appetite increased significantly. After having a hearty meal at the nearest cafeteria, Ethan rode a shared electric scooter, bought some fruit, and then headed towards Arthur's residence, which he remembered. More than 20 minutes passed quietly. Arthur's residence. This was the same type of building as Ethan's dormitory, two-story villa. After parking, Ethan walked towards Arthur's residence. As he approached, Ethan noticed that at the entrance to the residence, there was an older man who looked like he was waiting for someone. Needless to say, this must be the butler that Richard mentioned. There was also a burly middle-aged man, as upright as a pine tree, with piercing eyes. He was clearly the bodyguard. Although Professor Kuhn's strength as a 7th-tier ice-type master made this middle-aged man inferior, they were better described as alarm officers, simply serving as an alarm system. Ethan quickly tidied his hair and clothes to ensure he looked like a composed student, then walked over to meet their gazes. Seeing him, the butler vaguely guessed Ethan's identity and also approached. "You must stay of the right?" the butler asked. "Yes, I am Ethan." Hearing the butler's question, Ethan nodded. "Professor Kuhn is already waiting for you inside. Come with me." The butler waved, signaling Ethan to follow. Until the two arrived at the door of Professor Kuhn's residence, the butler pushed open the door and gestured for Ethan to go in. At a time like this, it was impossible not to be nervous. Ethan's throat moved slightly to calm his nerves, and then he went inside. Upon entering Professor Arthur's residence, Ethan easily spotted a figure seated on the sofa, a middle-aged draped in a long gown who was taking small sips from his ceramic teacup. The aura unconsciously emanating from him caused Ethan's breath to catch and his heart rate to quicken. However, after using his special abilities to control his emotions, the sensation improved considerably. Professor Arthur noticed Ethan's arrival and turned his gaze over. As expected of a 7th-level Grandmaster, the pressure exerted by his look was undeniable. Ethan nodded slightly, maintaining an expression that was neither overly humble nor arrogant. He greeted Professor Arthur and requested permission to be seated. The professor pointed toward the sofa opposite him, and Ethan walked over slowly before sitting down. Professor Arthur smiled faintly, complimenting Ethan's skill level. He remarked that their school had not received any specially recruited freshmen with ice-related abilities for 5 years. Ethan scratched his head and returned a smile, stating that he felt incredibly lucky. Professor Arthur's expression softened as he shifted the conversation to the core topic at hand. He explained that while professors typically select students after the freshman competition, it was also possible to make selections in advance. Ethan confirmed that he understood this fact. Since Professor Arthur had brought up the matter of selection, Ethan realized that becoming his student was practically a foregone conclusion. Professor Arthur then picked up his teacup again and revealed a mysterious smile, questioning if Ethan's visit was for something deeper than simply wanting to be a student. Ethan spoke with complete honesty, clarifying that he desired not only to be Professor Arthur's student but also his official disciple. Professor Arthur responded with equal candor, explaining that becoming his disciple was straightforward. One needed to place in the top 3 of the freshman competition. He clarified that first place was unnecessary, merely achieving a spot within the top 3 sufficed. Ethan nodded and readily agreed to this requirement. Arthur laughed lightly before retrieving a skill book from the cabinet beside him and handing it to Ethan. The book contained the skill ice-breaking technique. He explained that this specific item was a gift, the skill book for the B-rank ability, ice-breaking technique. As Ethan examined the cover, Professor Arthur continued his explanation. He revealed that ice-breaking technique served as a prerequisite skill for his self-created mastery, ice explosion technique. He promised that once Ethan officially became his disciple, he would also receive the skill book for ice explosion technique. Hearing his promise, Ethan's gaze sharpened and his heart began to race. He immediately understood the immense value of what was offered. Ice explosion technique was an S-rank ability. Its book alone could cost tens of millions outside the market, making it highly sought after yet rarely available. Furthermore, because it was a unique skill created by Professor Arthur himself, it surpassed ordinary S-level abilities. Ethan made a firm resolution in his heart. He absolutely had to place among the top 3 in the freshman competition, and become Professor Arthur's disciple. Suddenly a crucial question occurred to Ethan. He asked what Ice-type ability users should do when they encountered Fire-type ability users. He recalled that James had mentioned an S-rank Fire-type ability user among the specially recruited freshmen whose self-control was particularly evident. This concern made him worry about accidentally running into such a person during the freshman competition and being eliminated early. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Ethan naturally sought advice from Professor Arthur. The professor pondered for a moment before stating with a serious expression that Ice was at a natural disadvantage against Fire. He warned them never to engage in a head-on confrontation unless their strength far surpassed the opponent's. The first solution suggested was raising a water-type companion beast, as water naturally counters fire. Professor Arthur then looked directly at Ethan and inquired if he possessed such a creature. Ethan shook his head slightly, confirming that he did not have one at the moment. A second strategy involved striking unexpectedly, catching the opponent off guard by attacking quickly when they were not paying attention so they could not react. However, Professor Arthur introduced a third solution. Noting that both Ethan and himself used spears as weapons, he recalled the adage, "An inch longer, an inch stronger." He advised that one could use a spear to suddenly unleash inner energy, knocking the opponent's weapon away. Then they should take advantage of the momentary lapse in concentration to deliver a fatal blow. Ethan understood. It seemed he still needed to hone his marksmanship. After concluding the strategy discussion, Professor Arthur asked if there was anything else Ethan wished to ask. Ethan replied that nothing came to mind at that moment. Professor Arthur then gave further instructions. He advised Ethan to visit the library later and select a body tempering technique suitable for him. He specifically recommended mysterious nether ice soul body, mentioning that he himself had learned this technique and offered his pointers if needed. Ethan, keeping those words in mind, and decided to head straight to the library after leaving Professor Arthur's residence. Professor Arthur then took out his phone to exchange contact information with Ethan. After saying goodbye, he casually asked a final question: when had Ethan awakened his superpower? Ethan replied it was about 10 days ago. At this moment, Professor Arthur seemed somewhat stunned and widened his eyes, asking if he was absolutely sure of the timeline. After careful consideration, Ethan gave a definite answer again. Professor Arthur burst into laughter, stating there was no need to wait until the freshman competition ended. He immediately declared that he would take Ethan as his disciple right then, asking for Ethan's willingness